I know you take good care of Meadow, Paul's daughter.
She takes good care of me. To see her with my children is one of the most beautiful things.
Nobody talks about the part that comes after. After the cameras stop, after the tributes air, after the internet moves on to the next thing. There is still a person left behind who has to figure out how to carry a loss that never gets smaller, just more familiar, and that is the story nobody fully told about Meadow Walker, the daughter of Paul Walker, and the quiet, unhurried way she has been building a life in the shadow of a grief that the entire world felt but only she truly owned. Paul Walker was born on September 12, 1973, in Glendale, California, the oldest of 5 children in a tight-knit household with a father who had once been a Golden Gloves boxer and a mother who worked as a fashion model. And he grew up in the kind of family where loyalty meant something concrete, where you fixed things with your hands and showed up for people without being asked twice. He started appearing in front of cameras at the age of 2, not by his own ambition but because his mother thought he photographed well, and what began with diaper commercials eventually led to small television roles and then to the bigger screen work of the 90s, but what Paul Walker actually wanted, what he told people when they asked what he cared about outside of acting, was the ocean. He studied marine biology in community college, looked up to Jacques Cousteau the way other kids looked up to athletes, and in 2006 joined a National Geographic expedition to tag great white sharks off the coast of Mexico, which is the kind of thing that tells you more about a person than any interview ever could. He owned more than 30 cars, co-founded a performance shop called Always Evolving where he worked on engines with his own hands and entered professional races, and after traveling to Haiti following the 2010 earthquake, he started a disaster relief charity called Reach Out Worldwide that sent skilled volunteers, doctors, rescue workers, builders, into crisis zones when bureaucracy moved too slowly, because Paul Walker was not the kind of person who thought writing a check was the same as actually helping. But the thing he talked about most, the thing that reorganized his entire understanding of what mattered, was his daughter Meadow Rain Walker, born in 1998 and raised in Hawaii with her mother until she was 13, when she moved to California to be close to her father, and Paul later said that being able to make her breakfast every morning made him feel, for the first time, like a complete person. He was in the process of stepping back from acting to spend more time with her when, on November 30, 2013, he was killed in a car accident at the age of 40, and Meadow was 15 years old and had to learn, at an age when most people are still figuring out who they are, how to exist in a world that her father was no longer in. The person who stepped into that gap, quietly and without announcement, was Vin Diesel, whose real name is Mark Sinclair, born in 1967 in Alameda County, California, raised in New York by his mother and her husband Irving Vincent, a theater teacher who treated him as his own even though he was not his biological father, and who never met his biological father at all. A silence that shaped, by his own account, everything he came to believe about what family actually means. Vin broke into a theater as a 7-year-old with plans to vandalize it and walked out with a script and a direction his life hadn't had before, worked as a nightclub bouncer as a teenager, created a short film called Multifacial about the experience of being a mixed-race actor unable to find roles that fit him, and got that film in front of Steven Spielberg, which led to Saving Private Ryan, which led eventually to Dominic Toretto in The Fast and the Furious in 2001 and everything that followed. He and Paul Walker met on the set of that first film in 2000 and became the kind of friends who don't require a lot of language to understand each other, bonded by a shared belief in loyalty and a shared preference for keeping the things they loved protected from public consumption. Vin gave Paul the nickname Pablo. When Vin learned he was going to become a father for the first time, Paul was the first person he told, and he named his youngest daughter Pauline in his honor, and he has said that he was thinking of Paul at the moment she was born. When Paul died, Vin described it as losing a part of himself, and then he did something that grief sometimes makes easier and sometimes makes harder. He stayed. He reached out to Meadow, included her in time with his own children, showed up for the events and the quiet ordinary moments that don't make headlines, and called her his goddaughter in a way that was not a title for the press but a commitment he intended to keep. Their relationship grew over years and through things that neither of them talked about publicly, which is itself a statement about how real it was, because the things people protect are usually the things that matter most. In 2021, Meadow married Louis Thornton Allen at a small private beach wedding in the Dominican Republic, and the person who walked her down the aisle was Vin Diesel, in a light blue suit, holding her arm the way her father would have held it, not trying to replace Paul but trying to honor him by being present in a moment Paul would not have missed for anything. Vin's eldest daughter Hania served as chief bridesmaid, which tells you something about how deeply the two families had woven themselves together in the years since the accident. Meadow has kept her life largely private throughout all of this, which is not the behavior of someone who is performing grief for an audience but of someone who is actually living with it and making thoughtful decisions about what belongs to her and what belongs to the world. She started the Paul Walker Foundation on what would have been her father's 42nd birthday, focused on ocean conservation and opportunities for young people, which reflects exactly the kind of man Paul was. Someone whose philanthropy was rooted in genuine love for specific things rather than general good intentions. When Fast X came out in 2023, Meadow appeared in a brief cameo as a flight attendant, a moment that lasted only seconds on screen but carried a weight that the audience recognized immediately, and she has been clear that the decision was hers, made because she wanted to step into the world her father had built and feel her connection to it rather than watch it from the outside. Some people on the internet questioned whether the cameo was genuine tribute or calculated marketing, which is the internet's way of taking a clean and human moment and making it complicated, and Meadow responded to this the same way she responds to most public noise, by ignoring it and continuing to live her life with the same quiet intentionality she has always brought to it. Rumors circulated about a formal adoption that never happened and legal guardianship arrangements that exist only in speculation, and neither Meadow nor Vin bothered to address them, which is perhaps the most honest response possible to things that are simply not true. Meadow still carries her father's last name. She still runs his foundation. She still posts memories of him on his birthday and on the anniversary of his death, not for engagement or visibility but because she is still his daughter, and that is what daughters do when they miss their fathers. Paul's brother Cody now helps run Reach Out Worldwide, which has responded to more than 70 major disasters since Paul founded it, and he also leads Fuel Fest, an international car event that raises money for the foundation and brings together the global community of people who loved Paul and what he stood for. The Fast and Furious franchise made the decision after Paul's death, not to kill off his character Brian O'Connor, but to let him live on within the story. And in the final scenes of Furious 7, the camera follows a white car driven by Brian as it diverges from Dom's road and disappears into the distance, which is the kind of ending that means something different depending on whether you are watching it as a moviegoer or as someone who actually knew the man. In Fast X, there is an empty seat at the family table and a blue Nissan Skyline pulling into a driveway, and a room full of people who know exactly what it means without anyone needing to say it out loud. Dwayne Johnson, who had his own complicated history with the franchise, once said that Paul Walker was one of the most genuinely decent people he had ever encountered in the film industry, which is a specific kind of compliment that carries more weight than most. Vin Diesel posts about Paul every year without fail, not as a publicity gesture timed to a film release but with the regularity of someone who is still in conversation with a person they lost, still working out what it means to go forward without them. In tribute videos and murals in Brazil and Japan and South Africa and on streets all over the world, Paul Walker is still present in the way that people who genuinely touched other people's lives remain present, not as a frozen image of celebrity but as a living idea about what it looks like to be kind and hardworking and real in a world that is constantly rewarding the opposite. Meadow Walker is not here to be the keeper of a legacy someone else defined for her. She has been carefully and deliberately building her own relationship with her father's memory, deciding for herself what she wants to carry forward and what she wants to protect from the noise, and the person who made that possible, who stood at the edge of a grief he could not fix and chose to stay anyway, year after year without needing credit for it, is the same person who walked her down the aisle and called her family long before the cameras ever captured them together. The dark secret that people spent years trying to uncover was never there because the real story was always simpler and less dramatic than the internet wanted it to be. A man died, a girl lost her father, another man who loved them both showed up and kept showing up, and somewhere in that ordinary, unglamorous commitment, a family was made out of loss and loyalty and time, which is how most real families are made, whether or not anyone is watching.